First things first, the second half of this video is going to contain spoilers, but I will give a fair warning beforehand. I highly recommend you watch the movie for yourself before you fully watch this video. Now, I don't usually do reviews on movies that are too recent, but hey, this is a variety channel and I'm always willing to try new things. If you've been around my channel for a while, you probably know I'm not the hugest fan of DC's movies. But after seeing some trailers for the new solo Batman movie, which by the way, he hasn't had one in a decade, I wasn't super interested. It's directed by Matt Reeves, who I've personally never heard of before this movie, and looking at the lineup of movies that he's directed, there's some pretty good ones and some not so good ones. But hey, every director has their ups and downs. Along with that, it stars Robert Pattinson, who I really only know from the Twilight movies and that one time he was in Harry Potter. So overall, I had some very mixed feelings. But this past weekend, I was dragged out to the movies to watch it with my friends, expecting to either really hate it or not care for it much. But let me tell you, this movie is amazing. It's probably the best movie that I'm gonna watch this year, honestly. Now let me preface this statement by saying I have yet to finish the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this is probably the best representation of not only Batman, but any DC character in a live-action movie. First things first, let me just say I am so incredibly happy that this is a solo movie. For whatever reason, for many years now, Batman has only been represented in movies and TV shows to be in a team of some sort. If you ask me, one of Batman's core personality traits is that he cannot trust people very easily, so it's quite difficult for him to work with other people. Even when he is in a team like the Justice League, he has individual thought-out plans for how to defeat each and every member of it in case they decide to turn on him one day. This is especially true in his earlier career as Batman, which is what this movie is trying to represent. So this isn't an origin story, but it's also not old man Batman that's been at it for years. It's a very well balanced in between, and I personally think it's the most interesting take for a story like this. Something else that I really like about this movie is its choice of villain. Look man, Batman has some goofy ass villains, and it's really hard to have a dark and gritty representation of Batman in the same movie as this fucking goofball, but they managed it pretty well. The Riddler gives a great intelligent foil to Batman. He actually gives him an intellectual challenge, making him use his damn brain. Batman is not an angry fucking punching man all the time with expensive gadgets. Snyder. This movie successfully represents Batman as an actual detective. Some of the best scenes that he has is where he's just pacing around a crime scene, taking in information around him and mentally connecting dots. It sounds lame as fuck when I explain it, but these scenes had me literally scratching my head trying to solve the riddles along with him. To me, a movie truly succeeds when it provides an immersive experience, putting you in the same position as the characters. And speaking of the characters, they are all great. Robert Pattinson really surprised me. His portrayal of this quiet-spoken, antisocial, and unstable version of Bruce Wayne is great, and something that you don't see much outside of the comics. I've watched and read a couple other reviews on this movie, and I've seen a decent amount of people saying that Robert Pattinson is a great Batman, but a bad Bruce Wayne. And this could not be further from the truth. Like I stated earlier in the video, and something that this movie makes very apparent from the first scene, is that this is year 2 of Bruce Wayne being Batman. This is when he's at his peak of instability. He thinks Batman is the only solution to this broken city, and that's why you hardly ever see him outside of the suit, and when you do, he looks like shit. At this point in his career, he thinks Batman is more of use than Bruce Wayne, and it's not until he creates the Bruce Wayne persona that they start to share equal importance. Judging from Pattinson's performance here, he truly understands the character of Batman, which is apparently hard for a lot of people, especially when he hasn't had great representation in a lot of media recently. Robert Pattinson's co-star Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman also does a really good job in this movie, especially considering how I don't really care for her character in general. Something that I think is really overdone, not even in just Batman comics, but comic book stories in general, is when they team two characters up with different moral compasses and end goals and end up kind of pitting them against each other. Spider-Man did it, Daredevil did it, Batman did it, and we all know how that turned out. Hell, Captain America Civil War is all about how Tony and Steve can't simply come to an agreement on something. My point is, pitting two heroes, or a hero and an anti-hero, or a hero and a villain against each other is no longer a unique and interesting storyline. Well, obviously they're gonna pit a hero and a villain against each other, but you know what I mean. When they team up, god damn. There was a point in this movie where I thought that's what they were going for, and it made me kind of roll my eyes, but they redeemed her character pretty well. I also really like Jeffrey Wright right is Jim Gordon. He usually serves as some slight comedic relief, but it's not stupid, quippy Marvel dialogue. His lines that are supposed to be funny all usually got a chuckle out of me, so he succeeded in that regard. For Paul Dano as the Riddler, the two scenes in this movie that I don't really like, which I will talk about later, just so happen to be centered around him, but I don't think that it's personally his fault. Some of his line delivery is a little odd, made me laugh quite a bit, but it didn't really pull me out of the movie too much. The last thing that I enjoyed that I want to talk about is the soundtrack. I love the main theme of this movie. It sounds like a mix between an old noir detective movie and an old western cowboy movie with a dark and grungy twist of Batman. It's no surprise to me that the soundtrack is so good because it's composed by Michael Giacchino, or Giacchino. I actually don't know how to say his last name. But this guy has a crazy lineup of amazing movie soundtracks, and he has a way of perfectly representing the tone of stories with his music. Alright, that's it for the spoiler-free section of the video. If you haven't watched the movie yet and don't want it spoilered, you should probably wait until you do to finish this video. But if you want to get to my final verdict, you can skip to the timestamp I have on the screen now. The screen, fuck. So one of the two scenes that I was referencing earlier that I really don't care for was the scene where Batman visits the Riddler in jail. This was at the point in the movie where I felt like the pacing was dragging a little bit and I was waiting for it to be over. On top of that, Paul Dano's line delivery in this scene is kind of odd and it makes him seem a little goofy and childish. The scene overall made me and my friends laugh at how stupid it was, but this is mostly made up for in the final act, which I really enjoyed. The second scene that I don't really care for is the tease for the Joker at the end of the movie. I've seen some people contemplate that this could also be Two-Face, but he references clowns a little too much to be a coincidence to me. The scene felt really forced and stupid and kind of sequel baity. This is the one scene in the movie that I think should not have been in it. It draws on for far too long and is overall unnecessary. Everybody knew that this was going to get a sequel, and everybody knew it was going to introduce the Joker at some point, so this is a surprise to absolutely no one. But you know what? I'm going to keep this movie as a record for having the least amount of negative things that I've had to say about it. I really enjoyed myself and was pleasantly surprised, and I'll definitely be seeing the sequel when that comes out. So overall, The Batman scores 9 out of 10 Zesters. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, maybe leave me a comment about your opinion on this movie. If you want to see more content from me, go ahead and subscribe, and if you want to interact with me a little and get some updates about videos and stuff, you can follow the Zestyy Instagram at zestyy.mp4. I will see you guys on the next video.